So you've decided to invest a little bit of money and get yourself the Chrysler Crossfire paddle shift conversion kit. In other words, it's little paddle shifters that goes up on the steering wheel, and you can shift your transmission via paddle points. This is the how-to instruction, video instructions for the install. We're going to go through step by step, and we'll see just how simple and straightforward this is. What I've done in preparation for this video is, from the packet, I've identified, as I've written A, B, C, and D on the package, so that as I go through the set of instructions, it'll be much clearer and much more easier to identify which packet it is, because there's not a lot of parts, but we just don't want to make any confusion. So step one is 10mm wrench, and loosen up your negative cable. Take your negative cable out. I've already done that to save a little bit of video time. Tuck it away nice and neat down there. Step number two, go underneath the footwell, and you're going to need some space because you do have one of the cables that has to come down through here. And what we do is just fold this back, take the foam out, and what I'm going to do is just put a light underneath there, because way on top there's a little access hole. Well, it's got a good size access hole. And anyways, I want to be able to see how the proper, I want to see some lighting so I can pass the wire, because it's got to come from underneath the K40 box through to here, and I want to be able to reference the location. So step number three, let's go back over here. Now remove your box. It has the BCM, the PCM, and the RCM inside there. And I'm going to show you right down in here. Okay, so there's your reference. There's the battery. This big chunk of wire is going down. If you follow that, there's a little hole. You see where they all lead to? They're all going down into the footwell. So I'm going to bring my little stick in there and right through here. So what we need to do is get our wire, which will be the first step, is the power horn harness with the 3-pin connector, which is packet number B. This guy right here. Right, and we're going to pass. So here's one end, here's the 3-pin part, and here's the spliced end portion. So the spliced end portion will remain in the box, while this portion will go down and find its way in that little hole. What I'm going to do to save my time, save a lot of time here, is I just have like a little wire, like a coat hanger wire, and I'm just going to tape these two pieces together like that, and I'm going to run it right in the bottom, as I said, right through there, and fish it out through the footwell. So that's the next step. Okay, so I've got mine all spliced up, and we're just going to go in from the back here and wiggle our way down, and we'll get the camera right in there. Okay, there's the hole. That's the one we want to go into. Sorry. That's the hole we want to go into. And just fish it in there. And leave about a foot of the other wire inside of your box. Now let's go underneath here and see if we can, if we did a good job, and if it's right here. So yeah, I can feel it right there. And here it is. So back at the K40 box, this is the K40 module that is identified in the set of instructions, also known as the RCM box or the Relay Control Module box. Just lift it up. There's no clip-on tie downs or anything like that. It just sits at the very bottom. Remove the fourth plug, which is also identified as plug D. Now, just in here, there's the letter D. So you got A, B, C, D. It is stamped on there as the letter D. This is the one that you're going to be removing. On the instruction, it says it's the only set of pins with 2 wires. Now, that is not correct. There is another set of pins right here next to it with 2 wires as well, but it is the portion D. So, pop that one just out of the way for now. What we're going to do now is we need to connect this and the horn cable all together. And in the kit, it comes already all prepared. So you got a quick connect here. And you got 2, a male and a female butt end plugs on here. And then in your kit, in packet A, remember the packets? Okay, so look under packet A, you will find another butt plugs. The both male and female. So you can tell this is the male, that's the female. So what we're going to do is get your D plug, and we're going to cut about 3 inches, just about here. And what we're going to do is install the male portion, sorry, the female portion of the plug into here. We're going to move this part aside for now, and this one here will connect into the white cable. Okay, so the first 3 inches will connect to the white cable, and the last portion, the long piece that goes into the box itself, it will have the male plug that you will need to crimp on as well. Okay, and you will connect that one to this, and this one will go into the black, will connect to the black portion of the horn relay. So I hope I got that on camera. Okay, after we've done this, you have the other wire, the orange wire. The orange wire needs to splice the red one here with this. So it comes with a quick connect. So you just pop this in. There's a little hole down there. So you pop it in. It'll sit in there. You may need to pry it down there with your thumbs or with something very, very, very blunt. For example, a popsicle stick or something like that. Just push it down, crimp it down. It'll cut a slot into the cable, giving it power that will also connect it to the red wire. Just shut it down, and you're off to the next step. Okay, so now that you have all of your connectors plugged in together, this is exactly what yours should look like. So again, there's your D plug that goes from the RCM. Okay, you got the yellow wire, you cut it out about 3 inches away, you crimped on your butt connector, and it's connecting to the white wire. So that's A. B, you have your orange wire that looks kind of pinkish, but it's got an orange stripe on it, and it's going into the quick connect right here. And as you can see, it went inside. I clamped it down, and it created a cut inside the wire so that it can be attached, it can be connected to here. Now on this one, you have to remember you have a fuse to install, and the fuse comes in the kit, so you don't have to go and buy one. So make sure that you install the fuse in. There we go. And after that, you have the other portion of the other half of this yellow wire that we cut, comes from inside the box, so you can see it coming right from here. Okay, and that one there, as I said before, it connects to the black wire. So butt plug again, connect it, crimped it down, and now all you need to do is get a couple of tie wraps and just tie down these guys nice and proper, a nice clean look, and then you can tuck away all of your cables back into the RCM plug. So get a couple more of these, tie them down nice. Don't forget to plug that guy back in there as well. Now that you've connected all your tie downs, Make sure just put everything back in there nice and snug. Make sure that everything is well connected. Nothing came loose. Once you have everything all in place and you're satisfied with the results, put your cover back on and you're done in here. And now you can move back, go back to back underneath the cabin. What we're going to now do is remove the cover plate, and it's held with 3 nuts. One is located right in here, one right there. I've already removed those. They're 10 millimeter nuts, and the third one is just up here. So take your socket set, remove it, and then you just pull this back and bring it down, and this is where we're going to be connecting the horn harness relay. So I'm going to get a couple of tie wraps. We need 2 tie wraps and some pinchers, and we'll be right back. Now what you're going to do is locate the portion that I have identified as being D, and it's the module. So remove the module, and we will be placing that up in here and connecting the 3-pin wire that we took out from the K40 box. We're going to connect that here, and we're going to tie down this with a couple of tie wraps to the transmission module. Okay, so as you can see, I've secured the mounting tabs as well as a 2-sided tape as they are there, and I passed the tie wraps already down through just for save me a little bit of time. Gonna pop it down here and run both of these tie downs around, as I mentioned before, around this big clump of cables here, right here. And don't forget to remove the 2-sided tape just underneath here. There we go. And drop this down just about there. Make sure that you got your cables going through, and I need both hands to do this here, guys, so sorry, but you get the point here. And then our 3-pin horn cable will go into that guy right there, as you can see. So they just, it's a perfect fit. So there's no splicing, there's no dicing, everything just fits right in perfectly. Okay, so there we go, just like that. Cool. The next portion is to remove your shifter knob, the front console and the rear console portion. So let's get to this. This one here is not, as you can tell, it is not a stock shifter, but the principles are the same thing. There's a ring at the bottom here. You just loosen up the ring, it'll drop. And this one here, I use a little hex. Get inside, loosen up the little screws. In my case here, there's one here and there's one right at the front as well. So I've already done that, and it just lifts right up. Put that aside. Next step is you're going to take your center ring off. Get yourself these little vinyl trim tab tools. They are extremely handy, and will save you from breaking parts as well. They're very gentle, so they won't scratch your console portions or your plastic portions, and they come in very handy just to pry off some of these guys that can be a little. There's your ring. The next part here is we're going to be lifting this part here. So, oops, that was quick. Now this guy here, you want to lift, tilt, and back it up as well. It'll get a little stuck here, but nothing that you can't deal with. And if you notice, I've also should have mentioned this before, but in the instructions it does say to move your shifter into other gear than in park, and I'll show you that in a second here. I just want to get some of these tabs out of the way. And there's a tab right here, and one of those pull and push tabs, those are for your mirrors. So again, on the same thing on the other side, just squeeze and pull, There's your center tab or your center control panel. Now over here you need your little screwdriver. Okay, so get this guy here, remove the screws. You got 4 of them. Let's start off with the rear ones first, and then we'll move on to the front ones. You don't want to jump any sections right now. This will unlock the rear portion. Okay, so again, save your screws, put them all together in one location. And if we come back here, we can see you're gonna have to remove the brake cover. This one here, if you've never done it before, it can be a pain because it is on tight. So just grab it and move that way. Okay. There we go. That's off. Now, there's a little section in here in your glove compartment that needs to be addressed. Let's see if I can get that in there. Okay. Way inside. Take a look. Right back here. Okay. I move this back. I get back in there a little bit better. There we go. Okay. See. There. Okay. Just peel back the carpet here a little bit, and there'll be 2 nuts. They're number 10 nuts. So 10 millimeter. Just take those guys off. And once you have them off, you'll be able to remove the entire console. Now what we'll do is just remove the center console, and you just lift and bring it forward, and it'll come right off. Now keep in mind, don't go too hard on it, because you still have a wire connected to your mirror. So lift it up, bend it over, get underneath it, and just remove the mirror connector. Once you have that, you'll be able to move this out of the way. To remove the mirror connector off the console, come down here, and it comes in a 2-part. So the first part here, it just goes back and forth gently, and it's just a set of pins that's holding it. Okay, so there's no squeeze tabs on these things at all. It's just gentle wiggle back and forth, because you don't want to break your locking pins that is holding this portion to the top, because if you do, then you'll be searching for another one of these things. So now that we have that, we can move on to the next. What you will need to do is be able to move your shifter out of the way, but since your battery has been disconnected, and so you can't shift it, there is a little spot, a little hole right in the back here. See, right there. Just grab the screwdriver, put it in, and there'll be a little lever. So just pull back, and you can shift it into whatever position you need to. This portion will be removing, there's 6 screws. There's one here, one there, same thing on this side here and here, this one, and this one. After that, we need to remove this unit, so we'll have to remove this screw, or sorry, this nut and this one to lift it up, and then we will need to remove the holding bracket, which is located here. So that's the next step. Next part, we need to remove the shifter mechanism, and it is held down by 4 T25 Torx, but they're the security screws. So if you take a look there, right in the center, you see a little pin that comes out. Okay, well, you need to make sure that when you go to the store, and before you do that, that you get this one here. Okay, so there's your Torx T25, but it has a hole in the center. All right, so that will go in to all the 4 corners. So you have one here, you've got one right, just move this guy here out of the way, but you can see it right there. Sorry, trying to do two things at once. There we go. There's the second one right there. Same thing on the other sides. Third one and fourth one. So remove all four and we'll be at the next step. Now go get yourself your number 5mm Allen wrench, just like this guy. Okay, and you will have 2 additional bolts to remove here and here to get to the shifter. Okay, so work on this. So now there's another pin with another screw that we have to remove. It's back there, so we're gonna need to remove the cover plate. Get your plastic pry tool again. You're gonna notice there's 2 clips right here, right there. You could even grab your fingernails if you have long enough fingernails. I don't, so just gonna use this. Lift it up. You hear the click. Lift it up. Pops right off. Remove this out of the way. Now get your Allen wrench again, your 5mm, and let's follow it down. There it is right there. There's your last screw to remove. The next portion, what we need to do is cut off a portion of the rear bridge. So this is the rear bridge we mentioned earlier on. So if you notice the groove here between that little slotted angle and this one right here as well, let me use this. This is where we're gonna be cutting, right there. As you can see, somebody worked on this prior and they broke this. This is where the screw goes down to hold the console. So I'll have to do a little bit of surgery and get that fixed up. But anyway, so again, we're going to cut using a Dremel or a cutoff wheel. Just going to come in here like this. I'm going to cut off right there, and then we're going to cut off right here as well. And then we will be removing this portion here. So there's the shifter assembly. All the nuts are taken apart. I've tilted it up a little bit so that you can see. There we go. This is the connecting rod, sorry, the connector that we have to remove. That little guy right there. Let me get in a different angle, but you'll see later. Okay, I'll have it on the bench. A little later in the video, I'll have it on the bench and I'll show you how to disconnect it. But basically what you want to do is use a very, very, very thin wire. In this case, this is stuff from that whole ceiling tiles. So forgive my fingers here, but I'm just going to wrap this piece around there. Okay. And the reason I'm doing this is simply because I don't want to lose this little clip and have it fall underneath the heat shield, which if it does, and the heat shield is right down there, okay, that's not going to be pleasant to try to fish that out. So much easier to be safe, put a little rope, doesn't really matter what you want to use, anything you want there, and then just pry it back, and then you have to lift up the little tab there and just pry it back and it'll come right off. Now we remove the transmission shifter. Gently. There is a cable back here you will need to remove. That is in the way. So these cables, this set of cable here unclips out, and then there is a shifter cable also. It's the white plug right back here, and I know you can't see, but let's see if I can get in there with this. Okay, so you'll have to unplug these guys and unplug this one also. So just pressure clips and pull out of the way. Now to remove the cables. You got the cables back here that we're going to remove in a second. And then we've got this one here. It's called the key lock-in cable. This one here, what you need to do is press forward. Push it forward a little bit. Then press down. And as you press down, I don't know if you can see that, but you press down and you turn a quarter of a way, just sideways. You'll hear a click, and then you'll need to wiggle it out, and you'll know why in a second here. And if you take a look, you can see two pins, two tabs, one there and one right underneath there as well. These little locking tabs will lock in to right in the back here. Okay, you can see the lock-in tabs at the bottom and the top. So when you do put it in, either in or removing, what you got to make sure is you align these upwards, and then you can turn it to twist and lock, or twist and to unlock. Next one is this cable here, and this is just, you just pry that one right. That was easy. Just pry that one right off. On the bench, what I did is I brought the transmission shifter mechanism, which is right here. Here's a transmission shifter rod. Here's the clip, the hold down clip. And let me just zoom in this. Okay, now it's not zooming in. There we go. Okay, so here's a hold down clip. Okay, so when you're underneath the car, this is what's going to hold this onto the transmission shifter itself underneath the car. What you need to do is remove this. So the best way is grab yourself a flathead screwdriver. You can go in from either this way, lift it up, and you can push it, and there it is. There it goes. Okay, so on a side view, I'll show you how that looks. Okay, so it's locked. As you can see, there's no moving it out. So by moving it under, putting in your screwdriver here, you're lifting up this little tab. Okay, you see that lifting up? Let's try that again. It's this tab here. So if you look, okay, that's what you're going to be doing. By doing that, it'll release. To put it back in, it's just the opposite. You just lift and push back in. Anyways, thought that little tip would help. Next part we're going to remove is the display, your shifter display. And that's a simple one. Just pry it off here and on the sides, and that'll just pop right off. There's no connectors. There's nothing in there. So as you can see, it just pops right on. So on the side here, we now move. I'll bring this in closer. There's a little window right here. Doesn't look like a window, but that's what it's called. And what you want to do here is just remove this tab. Whoop, and there we go. Comes right off. And according to the instructions, you won't be needing this anymore. So, but just put it aside. And inside here, there is a set of cables. And these cables, it's a five pin set. Let's get in there as well. Okay, you're going to pry this one off, leave that one on, remove this one. So this one here, it's just a screwdriver, and just gently pry it off, remove, and put it aside for now. After you've disconnected your wires, simply lift the portion up and separate the two halves. All right, so now that we have our unit back on the bench and ready for the next portion, this one here gets a little tricky. So if we use the unit as it appears to be, with the 12 o'clock being that way, there would be your lines. Okay, this is your reference. So what we're going to start off is with this slot here. In the kit in bag A, you had this funny little piece of stick, and this is actually the shifter disassembly tool and paddle spacing guide. So this one here, you apply it inside this part, and I'll tell you right now, I've been playing with this now for about half an hour and finally figured it out. And what you need to do is push down and at a slight angle, not a big angle. You're not trying to pry it off, but you're trying to find a little groove at the bottom there for this to fit inside. And I found that if you use a pair of pliers and you simply, as I said, it's not easy, So simply push it down until you find the groove. Okay, and there we go. It came down. See that? It's going to go, the whole faceplate is going to go downwards, and that's what you want. Now go to the back part, and you're going to do the same thing here too. Okay, so there you go. Whoop, maybe a little too much, but there you have it. So now we take this part off, and we have this part set aside. Okay, next step, we need to separate the top and bottom portions. And the top part, just for reference, is called the shifter top sail or top gate. And there's two clips, two pressure clips on the sides here, you can see. So you just lift those up, as well as on this side, lift them up. And there's two more on the ends. So you got to lift those up as well. And play around with it. And there you have it. So that top portion is now off. Just remember where it's supposed to go to. Well, it's pretty simple because it's going to go just like that. Because your window, where your gear lever is, not your gear lever, but your gear indicator will be going over here, right? Or over here, like that. So it goes like this. Next part is to remove the top portion. I've already done it. Spent a couple of minutes just to find out where the clips are. But basically, if you take a look, again, from this angle, you'll see that in here and in here, if you flip it over, there'll be two more clips that you just lift up. There'll be two more pins underneath here and in this corner, as well as on this side, you'll see two more pins, two more pressure clips, and you can pry them all off. Once you have them all off, you get to this portion, put this one aside. Now, this is where things get fun. So you've got your board, lift up your board, move it out of the way, and in here, you can see right there. See where my finger is in the behind here? There's that little window. This is where your last connecting wires will go to. So in your last pack, I think it's pack C. I can't remember anymore, but I believe it's pack C. Anyways, you will have a set of wire that looks like this. Okay, let me put this down here. So you got your male connector, very, very, very thin set of white and black wires that have already been pre-tinned for soldering, and a ground cable. And it's all gonna go, whoops, and it's about, what, 3 feet long, I guess, 4 feet long. So this is the set of wires that's going to come in from behind, in here, and it's going to fit right into that little groove right there. So just pull these guys out. Okay, so if you remember, we passed the wires from underneath, from underneath into the slot locator right on my thumb right here. Okay, pass those through, come in from the other side, and I'll zoom out here a little bit. And what you're going to do next is, on your board, you've got that little hole right there. Well, this wire fits into the hole. And the same thing with this one. So the white one goes at the very bottom there, and the black one goes right at the top. So it is threading a needle through, threading a wire through a needle. And then once you got them through, you should see them on the other side. So there they are. Now at this point here, you will need to solder them carefully, and very carefully. There's even instructions on from Chris Messmer, who made these. It says that if you're not comfortable with soldering at this point here, take it to either a stereo shop, a radio shop, electronic shop, or whatever, and get them to solder these two pins to the board itself. So those two pins right there. So that'll be up to you to decide. I'm going to proceed, and I will solder these, and we'll move on to the next step once they're done.
Okay, so to make sure everything is all fine, I'm going to read the 2 pins. I'm getting a reading of 19.8788, somewhere around there. So, oop. So 19.89, yeah. That's good. Okay, so everything got resoldered in place. After you've added soldered, fold the wires in the back, put on your double-sided tape, tuck it gently back into position until you hear it click, or it should click back into place, and it just did now. So now everything's all back together here. Now it's going to be the reverse process of reinstalling all the pieces. So I'm going to get all my parts back, and we will proceed with that in just a few seconds. Now time to put everything back together again in this order. So you will have your chipboard with your wire already. We'll have the first plate cover with the 6 pins. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That will come right on top of here. And just align everything. Don't force anything until everything is aligned. And everything should just snap into place as easy as that. There we go. The next part is your belt. Now the belt, notice the position. There's a round hole here. There's a big square hole at the bottom. The big square hole at the bottom matches up with this guy here. Okay. Just pop that together like that for now. Then you will have this cover that goes right on top. This is your, if you remember, your shifter indicator plate. Yeah, it's going to go right on top here. And whoop. And this will also just fall right into place. Don't force anything. I should have put a little piece of tape there just to hold. But you want to make sure that your back portions align here. Okay, right about there. As well as here and there. Keep your belt in place. And then there you have it. That's on. You can put your cover back on as well. And then we'll be on to the next portion. Now we move on into installing the wire tap onto the 5-wire jumper, the one that we had disconnected prior. And you're going to be, here's the 5 wires, and so you're going to be positioning or clipping this onto the 3rd wire. So just separate a few things out of the way, put it in, make sure it's in. Mine is in. I'm satisfied with it, and just click them in. Until it locks, and there we go. Okay, just separate the 2 wires a little bit, and that's all we need right there. Next portion is reconnecting these 2 parts together. The instructions do indicate to move the hole into the reverse position, and we'll find out about that, exactly what it means as we move on. But put it to the reverse. Now get this together and make sure that you can get your spliced wire into there as well. So you'll need both hands at this segment and a little bit of patience. And I'm going to put it upside down and see how well that works better. So position everything. I see why you need to put, okay. So if you don't put your your belt into the reverse position, it's going to fall off and get stuck inside there. So position it there, keep them all both handy. Okay, about in reverse position there. Move everything back up nice and slowly. Make sure that your wires are protruding through that little window. Okay, and then you will be pressing inwards and upwards until everything snaps back into place. It does indicate that you may need a screwdriver to lift it all up, but I'm almost there. As you can see, just a little bit more prying and it should be in there. I will double check. I need to pry it a little bit more. So this is where you would be grabbing a screwdriver and pushing it into here, right into there, to make it move further up. So there we go, one clip, and then we'll move this one here up to one. See if we can get this guy to click as well. There we go. All put together back, or all put together again. My apologies, I forgot to turn the camera on for this part. All I did was use one of these cable tie downs. Remember these little funny, where did they go? Oh, one of these little guys. Okay, where the tie wraps, remember these guys? They go into here. Okay, and you tie it down and it holds it. So anyways, this is where it turned out to be. Just needed to adjust it to position it at that location right there. So in reference, this is what it's going to look like. Okay, your wires coming out. You got your tie down here. Your wire is being positioned sideways so that it's out of the way, not going straight back, but sideways. Time to reassemble the unit all back together again. You do have your safety Torx bolts. Remember, that's the one with the little pin inside, and that's the one that you need the proper tool to put it back together. So just align your shifter knob, carefully move the cable out of the way, and bring everything down. Make sure nothing gets locked or seized into position. It should sit right there perfectly. Put in your 4 bolts and tighten everything down, and we'll be back with this inside the vehicle, ready to install it back on. One thing I have noticed is, if you take a quick look here, it's preloaded, so it has a tendency to shift back towards the driver's side. So what you will need to do is move it slightly over towards the passenger side so that it gets centered. And once you have this in front of you, you'll understand what I mean by centered. So that, and you also see the existing marks where the bolts were held down to. So just snug it down so it no longer moves, and then you can tighten it down after. But just thought I'd mention that because I just spotted that shifting. So once everything is properly centered, you can align them with these rubber pads here. Okay, that can be your, that should be your marking spot, and this one just goes on top afterwards. That way there, you know you have everything all properly positioned and aligned. Now just go ahead and tighten them down quite snug. You don't want this to be shifting around you. And then we will bring this into the car itself. Actually, one thing you might as well do right now is plug this guy back into its original position. Make sure you got it good and tight. Oh, and it clicked right into place. Perfect. And now what we're going to do is, I just slid the transmission link down in here for now, simply for the moment, simply because we have to connect this ground to this bolt right here. Okay, that guy right there. And you're going to need a 10mm wrench. I've already loosened this guy up just to save a little bit of time. Now you're going to notice that in the kit, this guy, the ground wire, doesn't fit. So you're going to have to adapt this guy. Just cut off a slot on the side here and spread it open a little bit, and you'll be able to connect it. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, so as you can see, cut a little notch in there. Not a notch, you just cut a piece off and put it right in here. Put your 10mm nut back on top, secure it all, tighten it down. Once you have that done, we're going to pass this wire that it's attached to, okay, and it's going to go around there, around there, underneath here, and then we can pass it up to there. Things to note: one is the blue wire coming out of your wire harness here, okay, that's also attached to the ground so you don't mix things up, goes into that 5-wire connector that we had positioned, that we had clamped onto the 5 wires. So this is the connector for power. That's going to go right into here. And next, what I did to save me a little bit of irritation is I've disconnected the rear portion of the transmission shifter. Okay, and I just put it right here for now, simply because it was in the way for me. And I do note that in the instructions it did say to disconnect it from the shifter from here, and I ended up disconnecting it from the transmission. Anyways, it's simple and easy to reconnect afterwards. So now to the next step is we're going to be positioning this back into there, plugging in the electricals as well, and making sure that our cable, this cable, is run in the front here and pops out through the side here so that we can go and connect it. Okay, so it's a bad angle to try to get the camera in there, but what I've done is I just simply reinstall the cable that comes into here, and then you have this guy here that does go into right here, okay, right in here. Now you're going to notice there's a tab right there. On the other side there's also a tab, and then you got your locking pin on top. So if you position this way, you'll be able to put it in, twist, and click it. I'm going to need both hands because this is a little, there we go. Okay, and let's see if I can get it to lock pin just by one hand. Okay, so basically that's what you're going to do is that, and then you got to twist it around so that the tab comes exactly right on top here. Right now it's on the side there, so we just have to turn it 1/4 twist. Okay, now that everything here is secured, what we want to do is go back underneath the car and reconnect the shifter link to the transmission. And then we'll be able to get this right into its proper slot. I don't want to force this because I want this to be loose so that I can get the shifter cable to into the right position. Okay, so you've just rehooked up or reclipped up the transmission link from the shifter itself to the transmission, either at the transmission, or you may have removed it from the shifter down here itself. Whichever way you chose, make sure that you've reclipped it, everything is secured underneath the vehicle, and now you've positioned everything back in here. You've aligned your hole screws for the bolts that you need to rehook up, and they will be a T25, just a simple T25, no security pins in these guys here. If you remember the locations, you have one down here, one over here,
and one at the front down in here. Okay, so rehook up those 3 guys. Tighten it down. Next, make sure that the only wires you have left that are not connected will be your 2 window wires. So the set for the driver's side is right here, the set for the passenger side is right here, and back here is this guy. If you remember, this is your mirrors. So this one here will clip on back onto the center console once you get the center console repositioned here. I have a little bit of work to do because, as you remember, this clip broke. This is where, you remember, where we cut the bridge. Okay, well, the bridge has been cut, and now it is a question of putting that piece back together, and I will have to do a little bit of welding or plastic welding, or I'll epoxy it. And then what you'll do is, you don't have to do that part, but I will have to, because that will secure everything to this pin here when you put on your center console or your front console. Next, make sure that you put back in, reconnect this. There's 2 little nuts that goes at the bottom. Tighten this down good and secure, both nuts. And after that, you will be positioning your turn yaw rate sensor. That's this guy here. And if anybody has an issue with this part here, here's the codes, here's the numbers for it. Okay, sorry for the out of focus. Here we go. Okay, so again, this is your turn yaw rate sensor. So reposition that guy back in here, bolt it down as well, 2 nuts, 2 screws. After you've done that, what you're going to do is reinstall your front console with your 2 clips, remember, and then you will put in your center console. Remember, you got those 2 bolts at the back that you need to screw it in inside of your center console. Then you'll put your bezel back on top, and lastly you will be putting your shifter, your emergency brake boot back into here just by sliding it down the unit itself. Now what we're going to do after this, once that's all done, make sure that you connect the cable that you just installed from your shifter. Make sure that you connect that guy to the, whoops, there we go, to this guy. This is the one that came from the RCM box, or the K40 box that we had positioned right there. Okay, so I didn't tie that down very well because those 2 little tie wraps came undone. So anyways, you're going to connect these 2 guys together like that, and once that's all done, secure everything underneath with some tight clips. Make sure that you run your cables nice and neat underneath here, and then you can fold all that back together, put it back just as it was before. Then we will move on to portion B. Portion B will be to install the actual paddle shifters onto the steering wheel. Underneath the footwell, I want to show you what I just did. A couple of points that I wanted to re-secure because I thought it was a little loose. If you remember these little tabs, the tab holders, little plastic clip that has holes in them, and you can put your tie wrap around them and it sticks to whatever portion you want. Well, I just took a look and this one here kept coming off. So I decided, you know what, I'm just going to put a big tie wrap around these wires here, and I've got it on top of this loom right there, and on top of this wire loom over here as well on this side. So it's being held secure. It's not cutting into any existing wires either. So you just want it snug. Then I came over here and I popped in a piece of tape just to hold the 2 pieces together in case of bouncing. I also put in another tie wrap. Let's get that zoomed in. There we go, right there. One at this point here with attached to the larger set of wires, and then up here and up here. So
I did it this way because by moving it up and down, I could see if there was any kinks happening. So make sure that when you do put everything back in, there is no kinks. Once you've got everything up to your satisfaction, then you can pop this guy back up. There's 3 screws that are coming up from the bottom. So I'm going to try doing this with one hand. There we go. And I missed this guy. So there's one there, and there's one over here. Okay. And if you've lined them, see that guy there? If you've aligned them properly, then your third one, this guy here, should come right into place. So make sure you put your screws back in, your bolts back up, I should say, all 3 of them. Secure them. Once you've done all 3, what you can do is you're ready to put everything back together underneath here. Get your piece of foam. By the way, a lot of tall people, passengers, some of the owners actually remove this thing here. It's about 1 inch thick, and they say that it's much more comfortable for tall passengers. It gives them a little bit of extra leg room. That's up to you if you want to give that a shot or not. Anyways, put that back up. Fold your carpet back in, and this portion is done. Now let's get to that steering wheel and the paddle shifters. This portion, you'll need your T30 torque screw, and you'll need to have your steering wheel turned so that you can remove the airbag, and you will insert it from below. And I'll tell you right now, these things are in there tight. What I grabbed is I grabbed the butt end of one of those insertable screwdriver bits. Okay, it's got a nice little hole in it. Popped it in here and turned it, cracked it open. Just take the bolts right off. Okay, here we go. So bolts are there. I'll deal with that after. Now once you get to here, what you're going to do is there is a yellow clip located right there. Let's get into a different angle here. And that clip comes right off. You just pry this guy right off. That's all it is, just 2 little pins. There's your airbag. Put this aside for now. Now what you're going to do is disconnect your wires. So in case you ever want to know how to not forget how to put something back in, you should take photos. Okay? That way there you'll never forget. Now you've got 2 clips that are holding these guys together, and you can't mess these guys up because when it comes time to put them back in, they're 2 different sizes. Okay, so put your steering wheel back into the straight position. Okay, inside here what you're going to notice is there's a bolt. I'm going to take this off here. Okay, there's that big nut, that big bolt right there. It's a hex bolt. Now I'm going to have to figure out which number it is and let you guys know. You can put it on, if you've got one of those that adapts to your socket set, I would suggest you put it on because these guys here are quite tight and you will need to torque it off while you're holding the steering wheel. You'll also need to know is take a look at the position of your pins. Okay, you want to keep everything aligned the way they are now with the steering wheel. All right, so we'll be back in a minute and I'll show you my setup. Okay, so here's what you're going to need. You're going to need a 3/8 X socket. Pop it in. Get yourself a helper, and that bolt is on quite tight. Insert it in. Make sure you're in there tight. Hold the steering wheel. It needs it, and There we go. That's where you're going to remove. Put that aside. Now you can remove the steering wheel by itself. Just remember the positioning, okay? And I'll show you again. Make sure you get this right. Here's where your markers are located. Okay, let's see if I can get this to Okay, you have one arrow there, one here, and note these little two black tabs, one there, one above. You want to make sure that they're perfectly aligned with those marks. Okay, black mark, arrow, and arrow. Okay, so now what you can do is remove your steering wheel and carefully guide your wires through this hole here. Don't yank, just pull it out. Okay, you can remove your steering wheel and we'll get to the bench and we'll go from there. One thing I forgot to mention earlier on, and it is this piece of advice from your steering wheel. When you remove your steering wheel, do not turn, do not remove, don't touch your clock spring right here. Okay, make sure, and if you do happen to touch it, just make sure that this arrow matches this with this with this. Okay, so I'm showing it a little bit of an angle here, so I just have to move it a tad. Okay, get everything all lined up perfectly. So basically when your wheels are straight in front of you, okay, this arrow will show that your steering wheel is straight. So if your steering wheel is off and your wheels are straight, you can come back and readjust it at a later time. All right, this portion we're going to be taking away these two components. One is your horn holder and the other one is just a bracket. So what we'll need to do is, there's 4 screws at the bottom here. I've already removed 3, and you will also be removing these 4 screws up on top here. These are very, they're not put on tight, so when you put them back in, make sure you just put the top ones here snug, no more than snug. Okay, that's when you press down. There's some springs underneath it, so when you do remove it, make sure your springs are still connected to the 4 pins, and note where they go. They will go right back onto the 4 posts, right where the nut screws in. So put this aside. The next one here is underneath. There will be 4. I've already removed 3. These are number 8 millimeters. So there's a nut and bolt. So in the back there's the nut. Take this off. Put these aside. Now you can remove this portion off. This is where you're going to be working with for the present time being. What we're going to be doing here is we need to drill 2 holes. So the holes are located on the sides in here and in here. So if you take a look at a clock, it's 3 o'clock position and the 9 o'clock position. Okay. The size of the hole is going to be a 7/16, and I'm going to be using a step drill. And just to make things easier for myself, is I am going to locate the 7/16. There it is right there. And I'm going to put a piece of tape right after it so that I know not to go past that mark. There we go. So that will be my mark to know that I've gone and I've achieved the proper diameter. The reason for that is your paddle shifters, the cables themselves, especially the clip, needs to go through this portion on this side, and the other paddle shifter needs to go through on that side. So double check your measurements, make sure that you got the 3 and 9 o'clock, make sure you have the 3 and 9 o'clock positioned properly. Then just go on and drill right in the center of it. And I think I'll go from this end here, I'll measure that, and I'll go from that end just so I can get a better rounded hole or access point. Okay, so one thing you're going to notice is as you're drilling, if you're drilling from the outside, this is double-sided. So what I would suggest is go very gently, go nice and slow. Forget that mark there, that came up to 2 o'clock. So anyways, that's where I want it to be, exactly there. And take it nice and easy. And this time I'm going to drill from this side, start off my drill bit from this point here. And then push outwards. Wasn't that much of an issue. All I did was I just used a rounded hammer and just pounded it back into position. So if you do go from the outside, just make sure to pound it back in nice and flush, and make sure that you remove all the burrs. Use a file and get everything nice and clean, because again, your wires are going to be going through there, so we don't want any burrs to cut through. You're now at the stage where you are getting prepared to cut your holes on both sides of the steering wheel to insert your paddle shifters. The kit comes with a sticker that is exactly the same size for the paddle shifter, and what you need to do is find your center. So mark your center line from here to here. I've done so with a red marker, and then figure out your alignment point, which will be, if you can see right here, okay, that's where the stitch line is, and get a better zoom, and I'm about 1 millimeter from this line as well, from the bottom. So right down dead center to this mark, and 1 millimeter above this mark here. And your tape, what I did is I just used masking tape to align this up to the center point of this here. This is your casting mark. So I made a little red dot there. That's my center line. Aligned the center line from there all the way down, straight down the middle. So this is exactly where you're going to be making your cut all around. Go down about 1/4 of an inch, and then you can slice it right down the middle, and then you'll be able to start cutting it out and digging it out nice and slowly. Let's get that going. So while you're cutting this, make sure that you do have a good steady hand, and take your time. Make sure that the hole is really nice and neat, because this is the part you're going to have to put in. Make sure that it fits in there, so that this will be your pilot hole where you're going to be drilling through the plate on both sides. So as you can see, that's a really nice fit in there right now. Get both sides ready, and what I did is just to make my life a little easier is I did a full cutout just using a sharp X-Acto knife or a scalpel like this here, and then I went out and used my little Dremel, and very carefully is I just went around into the circles, but at an angle. Okay, so in other words, I was cutting on the inside, not on the top side, so that way there I could have a nice flush fit all around. If you're not comfortable with the Dremel, just stick with your X-Acto knife or with your scalpel, whatever you have. Take your time, just keep cutting, and then as you're cutting away, grab a screwdriver and just pry off some of the plastic gently off, and then just keep digging till you get down to this metal plate here. Now the metal plate does not go completely around, so if you press down on this side, okay, the metal plate stops there. So what you want to make sure is that you don't go fully through the whole thing, but you want to stay, for example, let me show you this. This is the best part here. So here's the plate, and I went a little deep here, but that's okay. That's not a problem. But you can see that the metal plate stops there. So as long as everything is shaved down pretty much evenly, you'll be fine to put in the paddle shifters. Again, it's not a super precise job, but you want to be as precise as possible. A good tip that was given is to start on the driver's side, or sorry, the passenger side, to make your hole. This way here you can get your experience and your knowledge and your your tips on how to do it, because the driver's side, this one, is the one that people will see as they come into the car, right? As they take a look at your car, they'll be able to see that one there. So you want that one to be as perfect as possible. Now get your drill, change the bit, go to a 7/16 drill bit. And what you're going to do is you're going to open up the hole on this portion here, right? The one you just drilled from here. Okay, this one here. You're going to expand it, but from the inside, and you're going to stop before you hit this metal plate. You do not want to drill through this metal plate. So from the inside, again, just open up the hole. Okay, same thing with the other side. Okay, get to the point where you got the hole done. I can see it there. This one not quite, a little bit more, because this part here is rubber. So you have the rubber, and there we go. So if you can see that, you can see it goes right through until I hit the metal plate. And once again, I did not go through the metal plate right there. Okay, so the next portion is we have to make an access port for your cables to run through. How this is going to work now is if we take a look at the paddles. Okay, so let me zoom out. So the paddles will be going on this side here. Okay, and actually it's the wrong way, but it doesn't matter right now. It'll be coming here. Okay, and you're going to be screwing this part through the hole you just made, so therefore it has to be able to fit in there properly. Now the only problem is you still have a cable that's hanging loose here. Okay, so with this cable, what we're going to do is we're going to make a little hole right at the bottom, right down in this little tiny crevice. I'm going to show you. I'm going to zoom right in. Okay, so I'm going to point to that. It's going to be coming in right through there. Okay, and if you note, okay, by the positioning of your template, that's exactly where it's going to come out. Okay, right beside the piece of metal. So we just have to open this up. You can use a drill bit, but whatever you use, make sure that you get at the right angle. Okay, I'll back this up. Make sure that you get at the right angle. It's going to be through here, coming right through that point right there. So you're going to make one for this side, and you're going to make one also for this side as well, in the same position. And then we can run our cables through the hole. So you got to make sure that it's big enough to fit the connector pin. Okay. Once you've drilled out your access holes, just at the very bottom here, make sure that they're big enough for the wire to pass through on both sides. Now what we're going to do is attach these to your paddle shifters. They will go in the back just like this. So what you need to do is slide through your cable all the way in, and there'll be a screw coming in through the hole you drilled in the first place, and it'll be attaching to right here. So make sure your cable goes in nice and smooth. Get everything all lined up. All right. Get your screw up. Start it up into the hole. It's a Phillips. And you want this snug, not tight, just snug. There you go. So that's on there now, nice and snug. We're going to do the same thing for the other side. Where did I put the other guy? Oh, here it is. Okay, same thing here. Go from the underneath. And what I did is I took a file and I just deburred the holes against the metal plate there. So once again, drop it in, make sure you have a nice fit. Oh, that's going to be nice, really, really nice. Again, get your screw. Position your screw in, tighten it down snug. You don't want to cause any damage here. And as soon as we've done this, we'll come back. And one of the things you need to do is double check. There's two sets of screws that comes with this one. There's a very short one and one that's just slightly longer. I am going to be using the shorter ones simply because once I've installed them in through the hole to reach the paddle shifter, what you should do is just do a quick measurement and see if there's about 1/8 of an inch of distance here. And this one here does show 1/8 of an inch. The other one came up a little too short, a little too close to the very top, and that could damage the shifter itself. So I'm going to use the shorter ones. You will need to measure yours and see how much space that there is, so that again you do not cause any type of damage. All right, we're in the home stretch. So what we want to do now is mock up to see how well this works out. If you remember in this portion here in the ground horn plate, we had drilled 2 holes and on each sides at 3 o'clock and 9 o'clock, and this is why. So your wire is going to run through them. There we go. And what we're going to do next is we need to protect these wires against these holes that we drilled. I know that we've already deburred them, but it's not going to be enough. So what we need to do is set them up here. Okay, and now notice. Okay, there we go. Nice setup. And now notice exactly where they are. So for example, here and there. And what we're going to do is we're going to add some electrical tape. Quite a lot of it as well. So we want to make sure that we do not get these wires damaged in any way, shape, or form. So I'm just going to mark this guy because I can see him right there. He's right at that point. I'm going to mark this one. Remove this guy. I'm going to add a good millimeter thickness of tape all around this guy, as well as on this portion. Same thing, add more tape and give it some good protection. All right, let's zoom in and see what we have. What I went and used instead of electrical tape, which is quite thin, I had the Gorilla Glue tape, which is very, very thick, and I wrapped it quite a few times around the wire. So I stretched it out, not too hard, but I stretched it out, brought it over here, and it is in there snug Very, very snug. It's not even going to move in there. I did the same thing there too. I put a lot of tape and it's not going to move in. So now what you can do is get yourself prepared to move the next portion is going to be to install the airbag mounting plate. And if you remember, that's this guy. Now you got to remember to put in, there's some springs on each one of the clips, on each one of these little pins. Okay. Whoop. There's another one there. Another one here. Another one here. Make sure that you put this inside just for the moment. Then install the airbag mounting bracket. And you'll see your springs are right properly aligned into each one of these holes, and then you're going to put in your screws. Okay, so make sure that they fit in, everything aligns well. You'll have 4 of them. And then the next portion will simply be to connect this guy to these guys. So quite simple. You can't mess this part up because there's your brown wire is going to go, and you can only fit one way, so it's not as if there's 2 ways of fitting everything here. But the brown wire will go onto the larger clip. I should have put the camera on a stand. Anyways, I'll tighten it down after once I get access with both hands. But the yellow one's got the little clip, and it's a little tight. We'll get her on there. Sorry. There we go. Okay. Now simply install your cables that comes from the paddle shifter to the harness here, and it straightforward. Doesn't matter which side goes on which side. Apply like that. You're going to tie wrap everything down nice and secure so that everything is out of the way. Once we bring this back to the steering wheel, these 2 clips, okay, will be attaching to the 2 clips that came onto here. So if you remember, we took those off from the vehicle that came out of the steering column, and now we've connected this new wiring harness for the paddle shifters. So from there to here, these will now be going on to the one onto the vehicle. Now the next step is just to make sure that you secure everything down. You have your 4 bolts, 4 nuts and bolt combos. Okay, secure everything down, torque them down properly, and then at the bottom here, remember, we got the 4 holes. So you got your 4 bolt nut and bolt combo, and do apply some medium strength, the blue one, medium strength Loctite, so that it does not back off of you. It did have Loctite on there previous, so we're going to repeat that same thing again here. Just a reminder, do not over tighten these guys here. These were simply snug when you first remove them. These were on good and tight, okay, the little brass ones. So these guys here, put them on good and tight, and those were number 8 millimeters. This one here is number 11, just snug, and that's it. And then just make sure, as I mentioned before, that you get the that you put on your tie wrap in a nice clean fashion, so that everything is out of the way. The next step is going to be to pass these wires into the steering wheel, and it will be going through this large set of holes right here. That's your set of wires. Make sure they're clicked on to the clock spring properly.
and properly connected, I should say. Pass your wires into the hole and gently feed it in. Do not pull, just feed it in. And what you're going to do now is, once again, now you're going to adjust your steering wheel to those lines again. So you can see there's a whole pile of there we go. Okay, so you can see the spline. Okay, there's a spline in here. All those little guys, they fit onto the spline of the steering shaft. And you also have an arrow here, 2 arrows. So let's get in here and I'll show you the 2 arrows. So here's one of the arrows right there, and the other one is located right here. Okay, those arrows also need to line up to the black marks that you had on there. Okay, so that's actually pretty good. Yeah, that is pretty good right there. So if not, you just keep turning, just slightly remove the steering wheel, and then just keep turning it left or right, depending on how much of an adjustment you need to make. Now the next portion is very simple. Is if you remember, when we disconnected everything, we had these wires. Okay, these wires were connected to this guy, this clip, and to this clip, this metal clip. Okay, so we took them off, and now we've reinstalled the new paddle shifter harness, and we went on to, and we used the clips that were used by these guys. Now we're going to do is bypass them, and we're going to go and connect these guys. Let's see if I can get this done with one hand. Anyways, you get the drift. Okay, there we go. We got this guy, and do this guy as well. Then once you have that, make sure that you reinstall your nut, your holding nut. Okay, and you can see from the manufacturer they used some Loctite. I'm going to use the same Loctite. It's going to be the medium blue Loctite. I'm going to reinstall it in here. I'm going to torque it down, and this portion, you want this portion to be good and tight. Okay, once you have that, the only wire that you'll have left, well, if I can get this guy, anyways, I'll get this guy connected to this guy once I get both ends free. The only wire you're going to have left is going to be the power wire for your airbag. Okay, so your airbag is, remember, that's this guy. So in the back of the airbag, there's a hole right there. Okay, and that's where this guy will fit right on. You also notice in the back of the airbag, you've got 2 holes, 2 tapped in holes right there that a nut will fit into. See that? Those nuts are located right here. These are the ones that you had to use the T30. All right, remember this guy, you have to use a T30 to get in from the back of the steering wheel to unscrew it to remove this. So we're just going to do the reverse process at this point. Okay, now you're back at the, you've locked in your locking nut nice and tight. All your wires are connected. You got 1 wire left. That's for your airbag. Push it until it clicks. There we go. Next, make sure that all your wires are tucked in, and double check one last time. Make sure they're all connected. None of them came loose. Installed the steering wheel. Now, you will use either your T30, or I should have mentioned, you can also use a hex number 4. And just go back inside here. My T30s are just a little too long, so I'm going to use a hex number 4 to tighten this down. And while I'm tightening this down, you are almost at the point of trying out your paddle shifters. Before you do, go around the vehicle one more time. Make sure that everything is properly snug, properly fit, properly connected. Nothing came loose during the setup. And if so, now's the time to button down everything. I am keeping the center console off, and I am keeping the transmission cover also off in the meantime until I do my test run and make sure that everything is fine. You wouldn't want to have to come back and remove everything because the wire came loose or who knows, whatever reason. Okay, so that's what we're going to do at this point here. So I'm done with these guys here. I'm just going to snug them down good and tight. I am going to double check all of my connections everywhere within the car, as well as underneath here. Make sure too nothing came loose, nothing came cut. And then once I'm satisfied, I'll go back into the under the hood, reconnect the battery, and start up the car and see what happens next. So time to try out the paddle shifters. Just finished installing them. Works very nice and smooth. Let's try downshifting. Wow, really like this.